The alarm screamed through the command center of Zerith Prime's main defense station. Red lights flashed across every wall and ceiling. Officers ran from one screen to another, their faces showing pure terror. "This cannot be real," Admiral Zektar said as he stared at the main display. His forearms shook as he pointed at the massive shape on their sensors. "Tell me this is some kind of mistake." The sensor officer, a young Zerithi named Vexpol, checked his readings 3 times before speaking. "Sir, the readings are correct. There is a human battleship inside our inner defense ring. It measures 2 kilometers long. The ship appears to be the USS Defiance. Zektar's purple skin turned a darker shade. In his 40 years of military service, nothing like this had ever happened. The Zerith Empire controlled 400 star systems. Their capital world sat behind 7 layers of defense platforms. Each layer could detect enemy ships from 3 light years away. No ship had ever gotten through even 1 layer without being destroyed. How long has it been there?" Zektar demanded. "We first detected it 12 minutes ago, sir. But based on its position, it must have been inside our defenses for at least 6 hours. The command center fell silent except for the wailing alarms. 6 hours. A human warship had been sitting in their most protected space for 6 hours, and nobody had noticed it. Communications officer Ral Tech spoke up from his station. "Sir, we are receiving a message from the human ship." "Put it through," Zektar ordered. The main screen changed to show a human male in a dark blue uniform. He had gray hair, calm eyes, and a small smile on his face. Behind him, other humans worked at their stations as if nothing unusual was happening. "Greetings, Admiral Zektar. I am Admiral Kane Bishop of the United Earth Fleet. I hope we haven't caused too much excitement with our arrival." Zektar stepped forward, his anger making his voice deeper. "Human, you have violated our most sacred space. Our homeworld lies just below you. Explain how you got past our defenses before I order every ship in our fleet to destroy you." Bishop's smile grew wider. "I think you have bigger problems to worry about than how we got here, Admiral. The real question is what this means for your empire. You are 1 ship against thousands. You cannot threaten us, can't I?" Bishop leaned back in his chair. "Admiral, for the past 3 years, your empire has treated humanity like children playing with toys we don't understand. You've called us primitive. You've said we stumbled into space by accident. Your leaders have made speeches about how easy it will be to crush us." The human admiral stood up and walked closer to his screen. "Today, we wanted to show you something. If 1 human ship can appear in your most protected space without you noticing, what does that tell you about your great empire?" Zektar felt his heart racing. The humans had been at war with the Zerith Empire for 3 years. In every battle, the Zerithi had won through superior numbers and technology. The humans fought bravely, but always retreated when facing overwhelming odds. Most Zerithi commanders thought the war would end within another year. "This proves nothing," Zektar said, but his voice sounded less certain. "You got lucky. Perhaps one of our sensors failed." "All of them?" Bishop asked. "Every sensor, every defense platform, every patrol ship? Admiral, we've been watching your patrol schedules for months. We know exactly when your ships change shifts. We know how your sensors work. We know everything." Behind Zektar, his officers whispered to each other in worried voices. The young sensor officer raised his hand. "Sir, I'm detecting more human ships entering our outer defense zone." "How many?" 50. No, wait, 100. "Sir, they're appearing everywhere across our defense grid." Bishop nodded as if he had expected this news. "Those ships aren't trying to hide, Admiral. We wanted you to see them. The question you should be asking is this: if we can put 1 ship in your inner defenses without you knowing, And if we can coordinate attacks across your entire defense network, what else can we do? The command center erupted in panicked voices. Officers shouted reports of human ships appearing in systems across the Empire. Defense stations that had never seen combat were suddenly calling for help. Ziktar raised all 4 arms for silence. When the noise died down, he looked directly at the human admiral on his screen. "What do you want?" "I want you to stop treating us like ignorant children," Bishop replied. "I want your leaders to understand that humans don't fight the way you expect. We don't always use the biggest weapons or the fastest ships. Sometimes we use our minds instead. And if we refuse?" Bishop's friendly expression disappeared. "Then you'll discover that this demonstration was just the beginning. Admiral, we didn't come here to destroy your world. We came here to make a point. The next time we visit, we might not be so polite." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in shocked silence. Ziktar stared at the blank screen, trying to process what had just happened. For 3 years, his empire had been fighting what they thought was a desperate, outmatched enemy. Now he wondered if they had been fighting something far more dangerous. "Sir?" The communications officer called out. "We're receiving priority messages from Fleet Command, Planetary Defense Networks, and the High Council. They all want to know the same thing." "What's that?" "How did a human battleship sneak through our defenses?" Ziktar looked at the sensor display, showing the USS Defiance still sitting calmly in their inner defense zone. The ship hadn't moved since they detected it. It just waited there like a predator that had already caught its prey. "I don't know," he admitted quietly. "But I think we're about to find out." Aboard the USS Defiance, Admiral Kane Bishop walked through the bridge with steady steps. His crew worked at their stations, calm and focused despite being surrounded by enemy ships. Lieutenant Lisa Martinez sat at the helm, her hands ready on the controls. Commander Jake Sullivan monitored the engine systems from his position. Captain Amy Wells listened to Zirathi communications through her headset. "Admiral," Wells said, looking up from her station, "the Zirathi fleets are moving into attack positions. I count at least 200 ships closing on our location." Bishop nodded. "Let them come. Lisa, how are our systems?" "All systems running perfectly, sir," Martinez replied. "The modifications Jake made are working better than we hoped. We're still invisible to most of their sensors. 3 months ago, the USS Defiance had been just another Earth battleship. Then Sullivan, a former civilian engineer, had proposed a crazy idea. What if they could make a ship invisible not by hiding it, but by making it look like something else? The plan had seemed impossible. Sullivan wanted to change the ship's energy signature to match background space radiation. He wanted to coat the hull with organic compounds that would fool biological sensors. Most importantly, he wanted to time everything perfectly with Zirathi patrol schedules. "Jake, remind me how this works again?" Bishop asked as he watched enemy ships surrounding them. Sullivan smiled. "It's simple, Admiral. The Zirathi have 3 types of sensors. Energy sensors look for ship engines and weapons. Biological sensors detect life forms. Physical sensors look for large metal objects. We beat all 3. He pointed to his display, showing the ship's systems. "Our engines are running at exactly the same frequency as cosmic background radiation. Their energy sensors can't tell us. Apart from empty space, the hull coating makes us smell like dead space debris to their biological sensors. And we're flying in the shadow of their own patrol routes, so their physical sensors think we're one of their ships." Captain Wells pulled off her headset. "Admiral, I'm hearing some interesting chatter from their command ships. Half their officers want to attack us immediately. The other half think this might be a trap." "Smart ones," Bishop said. "What about their leadership?" Admiral Zektar is trying to contact their High Council. He wants permission to negotiate instead of fight. Bishop had studied Zektar's military record. The Zirathi admiral was known for being careful and thoughtful. Unlike many of his peers, Zektar actually analyzed his enemies instead of just attacking them. That made him dangerous, but it also made him reasonable. "Sir," Martinez called out, "3 Zirathi cruisers are moving directly toward us. They'll be in weapons range in 2 minutes. Are they targeting us? Not yet, but their weapons are charging." Bishop considered his options. The Defiance was a powerful ship, but it couldn't fight 200 enemies at once. However, fighting wasn't the goal of this mission. The goal was to make the Zirathi understand that humanity was more dangerous than they realized. "Open a channel to Admiral Zektar," Bishop ordered. The Zirathi admiral's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, his command center buzzed with activity. Officers ran between stations, reports came in constantly, and warning lights flashed everywhere. "Admiral Bishop," Zektar said, "my ships are in position to destroy you. I will give you one chance to surrender." "I appreciate the offer," Bishop replied, "but I have a counter-proposal. Call off your attack ships, and let's have a real conversation about ending this war. You are in no position to make demands." Bishop gestured to Captain Wells, who began typing commands into her station. "Actually, Admiral, I think I am. Amy, please show our Zirathi friends what we've been doing for the past 6 hours." Wells pressed a button, and every screen in the Zirathi command center began displaying new information. Patrol schedules, defense grid layouts, communication codes, and fleet positions appeared in perfect detail. Zektar's skin turned pale. "How did you obtain classified military data?" "We didn't steal it," Bishop explained. "We recorded it. For 6 hours, your own systems have been telling us everything. Ship movements, communication frequencies, security protocols. We know where. Every Zirathi vessel is located across 12 star systems." The truth was even more impressive than Bishop made it sound. Captain Wells had spent months studying Zirathi communication patterns. She had learned to decode their military language and predict their tactical responses. When the Defiance entered Zirathi space, Wells had been recording everything their sensors detected. "This information is useless to you," Zektar said, but his voice sounded uncertain. "Even if you escape, we will change all our codes and procedures." "Of course you will," Bishop agreed, "but that will take months. During that time, your entire fleet will be vulnerable. Every ship, every station, every patrol route. We could strike anywhere we choose." Sullivan leaned toward his admiral and whispered, "Sir, I'm detecting energy buildups on those cruisers. They're preparing to fire." Bishop nodded and returned his attention to the screen. "Admiral Zektar, your ships are about to make a very big mistake. If they fire on us, I'll be forced to defend my crew. When that happens, you'll discover that we've made more modifications to this ship than just sneaking past your sensors. You cannot fight all of us. I don't have to fight all of you. I just have to prove that fighting us will cost more than negotiating with us." Martinez turned from her station. "Admiral, those cruisers are targeting us directly." "Orders?" Bishop looked at the tactical display. The 3 Zirathi ships were powerful, but the Defiance had some surprises they hadn't seen yet. Still, once the shooting started, there would be no going back. "Admiral Zektar," Bishop said, "I'm going to tell you something that your intelligence services got wrong. Humans don't just fight harder when we're desperate. We fight smarter. For 3 years, your empire has been fighting the easy version of humanity. You've been fighting us when we were learning, adapting, and preparing." He stood up from his chair and walked closer to the screen. "Today marks the end of that phase. Today, you get to see what humans can do when we stop holding back." The first Zirathi cruiser fired its main weapons at the Defiance. Bright energy beams shot across space toward the human battleship. Martinez's hands flew over her controls. The massive ship turned and twisted in ways that should have been impossible for something so large. The Zirathi weapons missed completely. Striking empty space with the Defiance had been a moment before. "How?" Zektar whispered, staring at his tactical display. Bishop smiled. "That's the question you should have been asking 3 years ago, Admiral. How do humans keep surviving when we should have been defeated? How do we keep finding new ways to fight? How do we turn our weaknesses into strengths?" The second and third cruisers opened fire, filling space with deadly energy beams. Martinez danced the Defiance between the attacks like a fighter pilot flying a shuttlecraft. None of the weapons found their target. "Now, Admiral," Bishop said as his ship avoided. "Another barrage. Would you like to discuss ending this war before we show you what else we've learned?" In the science laboratories deep inside Zirath Prime's military complex, Chief Scientist Mordick studied the data from the human ship encounter. For 6 hours, he had been trying to understand how the USS Defiance had bypassed every defense system the Empire had built. "The readings make no sense," he told his assistant, a young researcher named Pictel. "According to our sensors, the human ship was not there. Then suddenly it was there. There is no record of it traveling through space to reach that position." Pictel looked at his own display screen. Could they have teleportation technology? Impossible. Teleportation requires energy signatures we would have detected. This is something else entirely. Mordick had spent 30 years developing sensor technology for the Zirathi military. He understood how every detection system worked, and he knew their limitations. The fact that a 2-kilometer battleship could avoid detection meant the humans had found a way to exploit those limitations. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Defiance, Commander Jake Sullivan explained the modifications to his engineering team. The ship continued to float in Zirathi space, surrounded by enemy vessels that couldn't decide whether to attack or negotiate. "The key was understanding how their sensors actually work," Sullivan said to his chief engineer, Petty Officer Dan Cooper. "Most people think sensors just detect objects in space. But sensors are really just machines that look for specific things." Cooper nodded. "So instead of hiding from the sensors, we made ourselves look like something they weren't programmed to notice." Exactly. Their energy sensors look for engine signatures that don't match natural background radiation. So we tuned our engines to match that background radiation perfectly. Their biological sensors detect life signs that seem out of place in empty space. So we coated our hull with organic compounds that smell like old space debris. The hull coating had been Sullivan's most difficult challenge. He had needed to create a mixture that would fool biological sensors without interfering with the ship's systems. After months of experimentation, he had found the answer in the organic waste recycling systems of captured Zirathi ships. "The really clever part," Sullivan continued, "was the timing. We studied their patrol schedules for 4 months. Lieutenant Martinez plotted a course that kept us in the sensor shadows of their own ships. In the ship's navigation center, Lieutenant Lisa Martinez showed her route calculations to the other pilots. The Zirathi use a standard patrol pattern, she explained. Every 12 hours, their ships move in predetermined paths through their defense zones. If you know the pattern, you can predict exactly where their sensors will be looking." Martinez had been a commercial pilot before the war started. She had spent years navigating through busy space lanes, avoiding other ships and obstacles. Those skills had proven invaluable for military operations. "We didn't sneak between their defenses," she said. "We hid behind their defenses. Every time their sensors swept our area, we were positioned so that one of their own ships was blocking their view of us." Back in the Zirathi Science Laboratory, Mordick finally began to understand what had happened. He called Admiral Zektar. Immediately. "Admiral, I have preliminary findings about the human ship," Mordek reported through the communication system. "Tell me how they did it," Zektar demanded. "They used our own systems against us. Our energy sensors detected their ship, but the readings matched background radiation, so the computers ignored them. Our biological sensors detected organic compounds, but they appeared to be debris, so the computers ignored them. Our physical sensors detected a large metal object, but it was positioned behind our own patrol ships, so the computers classified it as friendly." Zektar felt his heart sinking. "You're saying our defenses worked perfectly, but the computers were programmed to ignore what they detected?" "Precisely. The humans studied our systems and found ways to trigger responses that would make our computers dismiss them as unimportant." On the USS Defiance, Captain Amy Wells continued monitoring Zirithi communications. She had learned their language during her time as a diplomat, before the war had made diplomacy impossible. "Admiral," she reported to Bishop, "their scientists have figured out how we did it. They're also discovering that we've been recording their communications this entire time." Wells had been Earth's ambassador to the Zirithi Empire before the war began. She had tried for months to negotiate a peaceful relationship between the two species. The Zirithi had treated her with polite contempt, making it clear that they viewed humans as inferior beings who had no right to expand into space. Diplomacy failed and war began. Wells had volunteered for military intelligence. Her knowledge of Zirithi culture and language made her invaluable for understanding enemy communications and planning operations. "What are they saying about us now?" Bishop asked. "They're scared," Wells replied. "Not just of our ship, but of what it represents. Some of their leaders are calling for immediate attacks on all human colonies. Others are suggesting that maybe they should negotiate with us as equals." The political implications were spreading throughout the Zirithi Empire. Member species that had joined the Empire for protection were beginning to question whether the Zirithi could actually protect them. If humans could strike at the Empire's capital, what was to stop other enemies from doing the same? Admiral Zektar received reports from across the Empire. Human ships were appearing in systems that had never seen combat. Each appearance followed the same pattern. The humans would arrive undetected, demonstrate their presence, and then transmit a simple message. The age of Zirithi dominance is ending. The age of negotiation is beginning. In his command center, Zektar reviewed the military reports. The humans weren't launching major attacks. Instead, they were proving that they could attack whenever they chose. Every defense system in the Empire was now suspect. Every patrol schedule would have to be changed. Every sensor array would need recalibration. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the High Council is requesting an immediate meeting with you. They want to discuss the human situation." Zektar looked at the tactical display showing the USS Defiance still floating calmly in their inner defense zone. The ship hadn't moved in 8 hours. It just waited there, a constant reminder that the galaxy's most powerful empire had been outsmarted by a species they had dismissed as primitive. "Connect me to Admiral Bishop," Zektar ordered. When the human admiral appeared on screen, Zektar noticed that he looked tired but satisfied. Behind him, his crew continued their work with quiet efficiency. "Admiral Bishop, my government wishes to discuss the terms of a ceasefire." Bishop nodded. "I'm glad to hear that, Admiral. But I want to make something clear first. This demonstration wasn't about one ship or one clever plan. This was about showing your empire that humans think differently than you do." "What do you mean?" "You build bigger ships, stronger weapons, more sensors. You assume that having more technology means you'll always win. But humans don't just try to be stronger. We try to be smarter. We look for weaknesses. We adapt to challenges. and we find new ways to solve old problems. Bishop leaned forward in his chair. For 3 years, you've been fighting the humans who are learning how to survive in space. Now you're dealing with the humans who have learned. The question is, do you want to keep fighting us, or do you want to find out what we can accomplish together? Zektar considered the question carefully. The USS Defiance represented more than just a successful infiltration. It represented a fundamental shift in the balance of power in the galaxy. What are your terms? He asked. The emergency session of the Zirathi High Council erupted into chaos. Representatives from 12 different species shouted at each other across the massive circular chamber. Some demanded immediate attacks on all human colonies. Others called for negotiations. A few suggested that perhaps the Empire should withdraw from human space entirely. Council leader Vexmara, an ancient Zirathi with ceremonial scars covering his arms, raised his staff for silence. The humans have made their point clear. They can strike at our capital whenever they choose. The question before us is simple. Do we negotiate or do we fight? General Kilrex, commander of the Empire's largest battle fleet, slammed his fist on his speaking platform. We fight. One human ship means nothing. We have thousands of ships. We can overwhelm them with pure numbers. And how do you plan to? Fight ships you cannot detect? Asked Science Advisor Mordic. Every sensor grid in the Empire is now compromised. The humans know our patrol schedules, our communication codes, and our defense layouts. Aboard the USS Defiance, Admiral Bishop watched the tactical display as more Zirathi ships arrived in the system. Captain Wells had been monitoring their communications, and the reports were troubling. Admiral, Wells said, I'm hearing chatter about a massive fleet buildup. General Kilrex is assembling over 500 ships for a direct assault on our position. Bishop frowned. He had hoped the demonstration would convince the Zirathi to negotiate, but some of their leaders clearly preferred violence to admitting they had been wrong. How long do we have? He asked. 6 hours, maybe less. The general is pulling ships from across 3 sectors. Lieutenant Martinez looked up from her navigation station. Sir, we could leave now. Our mission was to prove we could get here undetected. We've done that. We could leave, Bishop agreed, but if we do, the hardliners will claim we were afraid to fight. They'll use our withdrawal as proof that humans only know how to run and hide. Commander Sullivan understood what his admiral was thinking. You want to stay and face their fleet. I want to finish what we started. If we're going to change how the galaxy sees humanity, we can't back down now. Sullivan nodded and turned to his engineering team. All right, people. We've shown them how we can hide. Now let's show them how we fight. The next 6 hours passed. Quickly aboard the Defiance, Sullivan's engineers worked to prepare the ship's experimental weapon systems. Martinez programmed new flight patterns that would maximize their maneuverability. Wells continued monitoring enemy communications, while also preparing countermeasures for their electronic warfare systems. General Kilrex arrived with the largest fleet the Zirathi Empire had assembled in 50 years. 500 ships of various sizes surrounded the lone human battleship. Cruisers, destroyers, fighters, and massive dreadnoughts took positions in a perfect sphere around the USS Defiance. Human ship, Kilrex transmitted. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Bishop appeared on the general's screen, looking calm despite the overwhelming odds. General, I have a better idea. Why don't you attack us and see what happens? You are insane. 1 ship against 500. Numbers don't always determine the outcome of a battle, General. Sometimes intelligence matters more than firepower. Kilrex cut the transmission and ordered his fleet to attack. Energy beams, missiles, and plasma cannons filled space around the USS Defiance. It should have been the end of the human ship in a matter of seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. Lieutenant Martinez had studied the attack patterns of Zirathi fleets. For months, she knew exactly how they would position their ships and coordinate their firepower. As the first wave of attacks reached the Defiance, she put the massive battleship into a spinning dive that carried it through the gaps between enemy formations. Zirathi weapons, designed to target slow-moving capital ships, couldn't track a 2-kilometer vessel that moved like a fighter. Most of their shots missed completely. The ones that hit struck the Defiance's heavily armored sections, causing damage but not stopping the ship. Commander Sullivan activated the ship's experimental weapon systems. Instead of traditional energy beams or missiles, the Defiance fired electromagnetic pulse bursts that were specifically tuned to disrupt Zirathi shield generators. The pulse weapons had been Sullivan's idea. Rather than trying to overpower Zirathi shields, he had designed weapons that would confuse the shield systems and cause them to shut down temporarily. Without shields, even the largest Zirathi ships became vulnerable to conventional weapons. Target their command ships first, Bishop ordered. If we can disrupt their coordination, the rest of the fleet will be easier to handle. Captain Wells had been studying Zirathi fleet tactics for years. She knew that their ships relied heavily on centralized command and control. If the command ships were disabled, the individual vessels would struggle to coordinate their attacks. Wells activated the ship's electronic warfare systems, broadcasting signals on the same frequencies the Zirathi used for fleet coordination. The signals didn't contain actual orders, but they created enough interference to disrupt communication between ships. The result was chaos. Zirathi vessels found themselves attacking empty space because their targeting data was corrupted. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems received conflicting information. Some vessels accidentally fired on their own allies when their identification systems malfunctioned. General Kilrex watched in horror as his perfect battle formation fell apart. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were systematically dismantling his fleet using tactics he had never seen before. How are they doing this? He demanded of his tactical officer. Sir, they appear to be jamming our communications, disrupting our shields, and using our own formation against us. Every time we try to target them, they move to a position where our own ships block our line of fire. The USS Defiance continued its deadly dance through the Zirathi fleet. Martinez piloted the huge ship with skills that shouldn't have been possible, weaving between enemy vessels and staying one step ahead of their weapons. Sullivan's pulse guns disabled ship after ship, leaving them floating helplessly in space. Wells' electronic warfare turned the enemy's own systems against them. But the human ship wasn't invincible. Energy blasts scorched its hull, missiles exploded against its armor, and plasma bursts melted sections of its superstructure. The Defiance was taking damage, and everyone aboard knew they couldn't keep this up forever. Admiral, Martinez called. Out, we've disabled about 60 enemy ships, but there are still over 400 active vessels. They're adapting to our tactics. Bishop nodded. The demonstration had served its purpose. They had proven that human ingenuity could overcome superior numbers and technology. Now it was time to make their final point. Open a channel to the entire Zirathi fleet, Bishop ordered. When the communication link was established, Bishop's image appeared on screens throughout the enemy fleet. Behind him, his bridge showed signs of battle damage, but his crew continued, working with quiet determination. General Kilrex, I think you're beginning to understand what you're really fighting, Bishop said. This isn't just one ship with clever tricks. This is what happens when humans decide to show you what we've learned. He gestured to his tactical display, which showed the positions of all the ships in the battle. Right now, there are similar Engagements happening in 12 other star systems. Human ships are demonstrating these same capabilities across your entire empire. The age of easy victories over humanity is over. Bishop's expression became serious. General, you can continue this battle if you choose. You'll probably destroy my ship eventually. But before you do, ask yourself this question. If one human battleship can do this much damage to your fleet, what will happen when we send 100 ships? Or 1,000? The communication ended, leaving the Zirathi fleet in stunned silence. General Kilrex stared at his tactical display, counting the disabled ships floating around the still-fighting USS Defiance. For the first time in his military career, the general began to understand that victory wasn't always about having more ships or bigger weapons. Sometimes it was about thinking differently than your enemy expected. All ships, he transmitted to his fleet, cease fire and withdraw to minimum safe distance. The battle was over, but both sides knew that the real war was just beginning. 3 weeks after the USS Defiance's demonstration at Zirith Prime, representatives from both sides met on the neutral world of Kepler Station. The meeting room was simple: a large table, comfortable chairs, and display screens showing star charts. Of the contested regions, Admiral Cain Bishop sat across from Admiral Ziktar, with their respective diplomatic teams flanking them. The atmosphere was tense but respectful. Both sides had learned to take each other seriously. The terms you propose are reasonable, Ziktar said, reviewing the documents on his tablet. Mutual recognition of territorial boundaries, establishment of neutral trade zones, and joint patrols in disputed systems. Bishop nodded. The key is that we're talking to each other as equals now. 3 weeks ago, your empire saw humanity as a minor annoyance to be swept aside. Now you understand that we're a force to be reckoned with. Captain Amy Wells, now serving as Earth's chief diplomatic liaison, added, both sides have lost too many people in this war. It's time to find a better way forward. The negotiations had been difficult. Many Zirathi leaders still wanted to continue the war, believing that humanity had simply gotten lucky. Similarly, some human commanders wanted to press their advantage and launch major offensives while the Zirathi were off balance, but cooler heads had prevailed on both sides. The USS Defiance's demonstration had shown that the war could escalate far beyond anything either side had previously imagined. What guarantees do we have that humans won't use these infiltration techniques against us again? Asked Zirathi counselor Vex Mara. The same guarantee we have that you won't use your numerical superiority to overwhelm our colonies, Bishop replied. We'll both have to trust that peace serves our interests better than war. Commander Jake Sullivan, who had been quietly reviewing technical specifications, looked up from his tablet. There's something else to consider. The techniques we developed for the Defiance mission could be adapted for peaceful purposes. Improved sensor technology, better navigation systems, more efficient engines. We could share some of this knowledge as part of the peace agreement. The idea of human Zirathi technological cooperation had been discussed privately by both sides. The humans had proven their ability to innovate and adapt. The Zirathi had centuries of experience with large-scale engineering and manufacturing. Together, they could accomplish things that neither species could achieve alone. Lieutenant Lisa Martinez, who had become something of a legend among both human and Zirathi pilots, spoke up. We could establish joint training programs. Zirathi pilots could learn human maneuvering techniques. Human engineers could study Zirathi ship design principles. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. For 3 years, the two species had been trying to destroy each other. Now they were discussing cooperation and mutual benefit. Admiral Ziktar broke the silence. Admiral Bishop, I must ask you something that has been troubling me. The infiltration of our capital system was obviously planned for months. But your ship remained in our space for hours after revealing itself. Why didn't you simply leave once? You had made your point? Bishop smiled slightly. Because leaving would have sent the wrong message. If we had run away immediately, your hardliners would have claimed that we were afraid to fight. We needed to prove that we stayed because we chose to stay, not because we had to. And the battle with General Kilrex's S-Fleet? That was never about winning or losing. It was about showing your people that human ships could hold their own against overwhelming odds. We needed to change the fundamental assumptions your empire had about human capabilities. Zektar nodded slowly. You succeeded. The reports from that engagement have been studied by every military academy in the Empire. Our tactical doctrine is being completely rewritten. The formal negotiations continued for another week, but the real breakthrough had already occurred. Both sides had moved beyond seeing each other as existential threats. They were now potential partners in a galaxy that held many other challenges. The final agreement established several key principles. First, both species would respect each other's territorial claims and expansion rights. Second, they would establish joint patrols and systems where pirates and raiders had been causing problems for both civilizations. Third, they would create shared research programs focused on peaceful technological development. Most importantly, the agreement included a clause that neither side had expected to negotiate: mutual defense against external threats. The galaxy contained other hostile powers, and both humans and Zirathi had learned that cooperation was more effective than competition. There is one more thing we must discuss, Zektar said as the negotiations neared their end. The other member species of our empire are watching these talks very carefully. Some are concerned about what human involvement might mean for their own positions. Bishop understood the concern. The Zirathi Empire included dozens of different species, each with their own cultures and interests. This sudden emergence of humanity as a major power would inevitably shift the balance of relationships throughout the region. We're not interested in breaking up your empire, Bishop assured him. We just want to be treated as equals in galactic affairs. If other species want to establish relationships with humanity, we're open to that. But we won't interfere in your internal politics. Wells added, Earth's government has already received diplomatic inquiries from several species. The Altarians want to discuss trade agreements. The Centauri Coalition is interested in cultural exchanges. Word travels fast in this galaxy. The truth was that the USS Defiance's mission had accomplished far more than its planners had hoped. Not only had it forced the Zirathi to take humanity seriously, but it had also announced to the entire galaxy that a new power had emerged. 3 months later, Admiral Bishop stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance as it patrolled the newly established neutral zone between human and Zirathi space. The ship had been repaired and upgraded after the battle at Zereth Prime, but it still bore scars from that engagement. Lieutenant Martinez turned from her station. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Zirathi patrol ship Vengeance. Admiral Zektar wants to speak with you. Put him through. Zektar's image appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Bishop could see the bridge of a Zirathi heavy cruiser, with both Zirathi and human officers working side by side. Admiral Bishop, our joint patrol has detected unusual energy signatures in the Vega system. It appears that the Draconian Confederation is moving ships toward our shared border. The Draconians were a militaristic species that had been expanding aggressively in several directions. Both humans and Zirathi had been monitoring their movements with growing concern. What do you recommend? Bishop asked. I think it's time to test our new partnership. My fleet and your squadron could conduct joint exercises in that region. If the Draconians see human and Zirathi ships working together, they might reconsider their expansion plans. Bishop smiled. I agree. It's time to show the galaxy what we can accomplish when we work together instead of against each other. As the two fleets moved toward their rendezvous point, Captain Wells reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, she had been preparing for what many people thought would be a suicide mission. The USS Defiance had been expected to demonstrate human capabilities and then probably be destroyed in the process. Instead, they had started a new chapter in galactic history. Commander Sullivan reviewed the technical reports from their joint operations with Zirithi ships. Human adaptive systems combined with Zirithi engineering precision was producing innovations that neither species had imagined alone. Lieutenant Martinez practiced new flight maneuvers that incorporated both human improvisation and Zirithi formation flying. The resulting tactics were more effective than anything either species had developed independently. Admiral Bishop watched the stars ahead and thought about the question that had started everything. How did a human battleship sneak through? The answer, he now realized, wasn't really about stealth technology or clever tactics. It was about refusing to accept that something was impossible just because it had never been done before. The Zirithi had built their empire on the assumption that superior technology and overwhelming force would always guarantee victory. They had never considered that a smaller, newer species might find completely different ways to achieve their goals. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their ships or their weapons. It was their willingness to think differently, to adapt quickly, and to turn apparent weaknesses into unexpected strengths. As the USS Defiance and its new Zirithi partners moved toward their joint mission, Bishop knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The age of any single empire dominating through pure force was ending. The age of cooperation, innovation, and mutual respect was just beginning. And somewhere in the depths of space, other civilizations were watching and learning that the newcomers, called humans, had fundamentally changed the rules of the game. The question was no longer how a human battleship had sneaked through the galaxy's most advanced defenses. The question now was what humanity would do next.